The vast emptiness of space held no warning of what was to come. Among the stars, the Galactic Empire had ruled for over 10,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. None had ever truly challenged their might. Emperor Drav sat on his crystalline throne aboard the capital ship Eternal Dominion. His gray skin glistened under the soft purple lights as he studied the holographic display before him. "Another primitive world, Your Majesty," reported General Tark, pointing to a small blue planet on the edge of an unremarkable spiral galaxy. "The inhabitants call it Earth. They have basic space travel, but nothing beyond their own moon, rich in resources and strategically positioned." Emperor Drav's six-fingered hand waved dismissively. "Standard procedure, then. Send Admiral Vel with the 7th Fleet. Offer submission or conquest." General Tark bowed low. "As you command." 2 weeks later, Admiral Vel's fleet of 300 warships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each ship was massive, the smallest equaling the size of Earth's largest cities. The fleet moved with mechanical precision, taking positions around the small blue world. On Earth, panic erupted. Strange objects had appeared in the sky, visible even during daylight. Communications worldwide reported the same phenomenon. Military forces went on high alert, but there was little they could do against visitors who had crossed the stars. Inside the United Nations emergency session, world leaders argued fiercely. Some wanted immediate surrender. Others demanded resistance at any cost. "We have received a transmission," announced the Secretary General, his voice trembling. "They call themselves the Galactic Empire." The room fell silent as the message played. "People of Earth," came Admiral Vel's cold voice, translated perfectly into every human language simultaneously. "Your world now falls under the protection of the Galactic Empire. Surrender your governments, resources, and military forces. In return, you will serve as productive members of our glorious empire. Resistance is not advised. You have 48 hours to comply." President Thomas of the United States stood first. "We've never surrendered to tyrants before. We won't start now." One by one, other leaders joined. Despite their differences, humanity found unity in this moment of crisis. Admiral Vel watched the deadline pass without Earth's surrender. He felt nothing but mild annoyance at the delay. His second-in-command approached with news. "The humans are broadcasting a response, Admiral." "Put it through," Vel said, settling into his command chair. The human response was brief. "We reject your terms. Earth belongs to humanity. We will defend our home." Admiral Vel allowed himself a small smile. It had been centuries since any species had dared resist. It would make an excellent example for the rest of the empire. "Begin standard conquest protocol," he ordered. "Disable their military installations first. Minimal civilian casualties. We need workers for the mines." The first Imperial ships entered Earth's atmosphere, expecting token resistance at most. Their scans had shown primitive jet aircraft and missiles, nothing that could threaten Imperial warships. The first shock came when an Imperial scout ship exploded over the Pacific Ocean. Then another over Europe. Earth's militaries had combined their resources, focusing everything on the invaders. Admiral Vel frowned at the report. "Increase attack strength. Show them the futility of resistance." But as the day progressed, the reports grew concerning. The humans fought with unexpected ferocity and cleverness. They sacrificed their own fighters to guide missiles into Imperial ship vents. They used their planet's geography to hide and strike from unexpected angles. By nightfall, the Empire had established only 3 ground bases instead of the planned 20. 12 Imperial ships had been damaged or destroyed, a shocking number against such primitive opponents. In his private quarters, Admiral Vel composed a message to Emperor Drav. "Conquest proceeding. Initial resistance stronger than anticipated. Request permission to use heavier weaponry." The humans, it seemed, would not submit easily. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vel felt something unfamiliar. doubt. Admiral Vel paced the command deck of his flagship, his thin lips pressed into a hard line as the holographic display showed another Imperial transport bursting into flames. The humans had somehow adapted their primitive nuclear missiles to penetrate Imperial shields, something that should have been impossible. "How many ships lost today?" he demanded. "7, Admiral," replied his second-in-command, Captain Mira. Her voice remained steady, but her 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress among their species. "That makes 23 in the first month of operations." Veld slammed his fist on the control panel. "Impossible. Their technology is centuries behind ours." "True, Admiral, that they are." Captain Mira hesitated, searching for the right word. "Creative." The human resistance had not followed any known warfare doctrine. When Imperial forces landed in large population centers expecting surrender, they instead found empty cities rigged with traps. When the Empire established bases in remote areas, they faced constant guerrilla attacks. The humans retreated, regrouped, and struck from unexpected directions. "Show me the latest attack," Vel ordered. A holographic display shifted to show a human spacecraft, a crude thing of metal and composites, approaching an Imperial cruiser. The human ship was hit multiple times, but managed to crash directly into the cruiser's engine section. Both vessels disappeared in a blinding explosion. "They sacrificed themselves," Captain Mira observed. "Each attack is a suicide mission." Vel shook his head. "Not suicide. Sacrifice. There's a difference." He had studied enough conquered species to recognize the distinction. They believe their deaths have meaning. On Earth, in an underground bunker beneath the ruins of what was once Washington, D.C., General Reeb addressed the combined military leadership of humanity. "Project Phoenix is ready," he announced, unveiling a sleek aircraft unlike anything Earth had produced before. "Our scientists have reverse-engineered components from the downed Imperial ships. This fighter combines their technology with ours." The assembled officers stared in amazement. The aircraft featured Imperial metals and power systems, but was designed with human ingenuity, smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than Imperial ships. "How many can we build?" asked the Russian general. "With all global manufacturing redirected, 50 per week," Reed answered. "Not enough to match their numbers, but enough to bloody their noses." Meanwhile, on the Imperial throne world, Emperor Drav received Admiral Vel's latest report with growing irritation. "These humans are becoming an annoyance," he told his council. Admiral Vel requests additional forces. Imperial Advisor Lox, oldest of the council members, leaned forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider another approach. These humans show unusual." "Silence," Drav interrupted. "I will not alter Imperial expansion policy over one stubborn planet." Admiral Vel is simply incompetent. He turned to his military chief. "Send the Third Fleet as reinforcement, and inform Admiral Vel that continued failure will not be tolerated." Back on Earth, the first squadron of Phoenix fighters launched from hidden bases. Unlike the previous kamikaze attacks, these fighters could match Imperial ships in speed and maneuverability, while being small enough to evade standard targeting systems. Admiral Vel watched in horror as the strange new fighters tore through his patrol fleet. These weren't the crude rockets humans had used before. These were something new. Where did they get this technology? He demanded of no one in particular. Captain Mira studied the sensor readings. "Admiral, these are hybrid vessels. They've adapted our technology." Vel felt cold dread wash over him. In all Imperial history, no species had ever managed to reverse-engineer Imperial technology so quickly. Most took decades, even centuries, to understand the principles. The humans had done it in months. He sent an emergency transmission to Emperor Drav. "Request immediate reinforcements. The humans are adapting our technology. This is no longer a standard conquest." As he sent the message, Admiral Vel looked at Earth through his viewport. The blue planet seemed to glow with defiance. "We may have made a terrible mistake," he whispered. 6 months into the conflict, The skies above Earth had become a graveyard of twisted metal. Imperial ships floated alongside human satellites, both reduced to debris by the endless battle. Admiral Vell no longer paced his command deck with confidence. Instead, he hunched over tactical displays, his purple skin now ashen with stress. "Another supply convoy lost," Captain Mira reported. "That's the third this week." Vell didn't respond immediately. The humans had progressed from defending their planet to actively hunting Imperial vessels. Their hybrid ships, now called chimeras by Imperial forces, combined stolen Imperial technology with unpredictable human design. "Where are our reinforcements?" he finally asked. "The Third Fleet reports they're being harassed at the system's edge. The humans have placed mines throughout the asteroid belt. They're advancing slowly." Vell's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission from Emperor Draff himself. The Admiral straightened his uniform before accepting. The Emperor's holographic image appeared, his expression cold. "Admiral, explain why a primitive species continues to resist after 6 standard months." Vell swallowed hard. "Your Majesty, these humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They've reverse-engineered our technology and—" "Excuses," Drav interrupted. "Half your fleet is destroyed or damaged. Your failure brings shame to the Empire. Your Majesty, I need more time. They're innovative beyond." The Emperor's 6-fingered hand cut through the air. "You've had time. You've had resources. You have failed." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Return to the throne world immediately. Grand Marshal Colt will take command." The transmission ended, leaving Vell staring at empty space. Captain Mira looked away, pretending she hadn't heard his death sentence. On Earth, General Reed and his international team gathered in the new Global Defense Headquarters, built inside a mountain to hide from Imperial sensors. Holographic displays showed their greatest achievement yet, a captured Imperial cruiser. "Operation Trojan was successful," announced Colonel Diaz, her face showing exhaustion but pride. "Our teams have control of the Imperial vessel Asterisk, Swift Vengeance Asterisk. More importantly, we have their navigation data." The room erupted in cheers. For months, they had fought only to survive. Now, they had the means to take the fight to the enemy. "What about the FTL drive?" Reed asked after the celebration quieted. Dr. Wilson, head of the reverse engineering team, stepped forward. "We can replicate it. The principles are complex, but not incomprehensible. Give us 2 months." Reed shook his head. "We have 2 weeks. The enemy is bringing reinforcements." Wilson looked stunned but nodded. "We'll work around the clock." In orbit above Jupiter, Grand Marshal Colt arrived with the remainder of the Third Fleet. Tall and imposing, with battle scars covering half his face, Colt had crushed 17 planetary rebellions. He looked with disgust at Admiral Vell. "You've embarrassed the Empire," Colt said without greeting. "These humans should have been pacified months ago." Vell tried to explain. "They don't fight like other species. They adapt. They bleed and die like all others." Colt interrupted. "You lacked resolve. Watch how a true Imperial commander handles primitives." Colt's first act was to bypass Earth's defenses and target their largest cities with orbital bombardment. The humans had expected this strategy from the beginning, having evacuated most urban centers months ago. Underground shelters protected millions while decoy heat signatures fooled Imperial targeting systems. What Colt didn't expect was the counterattack. From hidden bases around Earth's moon, hundreds of Chimera fighters launched simultaneously. They didn't aim for the Imperial ships. They targeted the command modules specifically. In his flagship, Colt watched with growing horror as his carefully organized formation disintegrated into chaos. "Impossible," he muttered as human ships executed maneuvers his own pilots couldn't match. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, Grand Marshal Colt had lost a quarter of his fleet, a catastrophic debut that would soon reach Emperor Drav's ears. Meanwhile, the captured Imperial cruiser Asterisk, Swift Vengeance Asterisk, now renamed Asterisk, Humanity's Hope Asterisk, slipped away from Earth with a crew of Earth's best pilots and scientists. Their destination: the nearest Imperial outpost, where FTL communication nodes could give humanity access to the galactic network. The war was about to spread beyond Earth. Emperor Drav's throne room fell silent as the holographic display showed the Imperial outpost on Proxima Centauri falling to human forces. The once mighty station, with defenses designed to repel entire fleets, had been captured by just 3 human vessels. "Impossible," whispered one of his advisors. Drav crushed the crystal goblet in his hand, purple blood mixing with the spilled drink. "First Admiral Vel fails me, and now Grand Marshal Colt loses an outpost to primitives." The Imperial executioner had already dealt with Admiral Vel. His body still hung in the palace courtyard, as a warning to others who might fail. Colt would soon join him if this continued. On the captured outpost, Commander Jackson walked through alien corridors that humans had never been meant to see. Engineers worked frantically to understand the technology around them, while military personnel secured the remaining Imperial prisoners. "Status report," Jackson demanded, entering the command center. Lieutenant Parks looked up from the alien console she had mastered in mere hours. "The FTL communication hub is operational. We're receiving Imperial transmissions from across the sector. And the shipyards? Functional. They have materials to build at least 30 vessels of cruiser class or larger." Jackson allowed himself a small smile. In one bold strike, humanity had gained everything needed to take the fight beyond their solar system. "Begin construction immediately. Priority on troop transports and heavy cruisers." "Already underway, sir." What neither the humans nor Emperor Drav fully appreciated was how news traveled in the Empire. As reports of human victories spread, they reached the ears of dozens of subjugated species who had lived under Imperial rule for centuries. On the mining world Torax, the reptilian saurians whispered about humans who fought the Empire and survived. In the agricultural colonies of the Benthy system, insectoid workers passed messages about Earth's resistance. For the first time in millennia, the Empire seemed vulnerable. In his war room, Grand Marshal Colt faced the Emperor's holographic projection. "The humans have adapted faster than anticipated, Your Majesty. They now possess FTL capabilities and have begun establishing a presence in nearby systems." "You promised me their extinction, Marshal," Drav said coldly. "I underestimated them, as did Vel." Colt stood straight, refusing to show fear. "They fight differently than any species we've encountered. They use inferior numbers to greater effect. They sacrifice tactical positions for strategic advantage." "Are you making excuses, Marshal?" "No, Your Majesty. I am adapting our approach." Colt gestured to a galactic map. "I've ordered all Imperial forces within 50 light-years to converge. We will crush them with overwhelming force." Emperor Drav nodded slowly. "See that you do. The Empire cannot appear weak. Other species are watching." Indeed they were. On Earth, the Global Defense Council received its first extraterrestrial embassy, a secret delegation from the Saurians of Torax. "We have suffered under Imperial rule for 7 generations, the Saurian ambassador hissed in his translated speech. "We offer alliance. Information for weapons." General Reed studied the alien carefully. "How do we know this isn't an Imperial trap?" The Saurian placed a data crystal on the table. "Imperial fleet movements, defense codes, communication protocols, enough to prove our intentions." This was just the beginning. Within weeks, representatives from 3 more species made contact. The human resistance was becoming something larger, a spark of rebellion in a galaxy long oppressed. Meanwhile, the first human colony beyond Earth was established on a small moon in the Ta Ceti system. Unlike Earth's underground bunkers, this settlement was built for permanent habitation, a clear statement that humanity intended to survive. Grand Marshal Colt received the news with growing alarm. His Imperial intelligence officers reported human ships appearing in systems they shouldn't have known existed. They're using our own star charts against us, he realized. The stolen data from the Proxima Centauri outpost had given humans access to the entire Imperial navigation network. In his private quarters, Culp drafted a message he never thought he'd write. Request immediate reinforcement from the Imperial core fleets. Human expansion accelerating beyond containment capabilities. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Empire faced an enemy that grew stronger with each engagement instead of weaker. The war was no longer about conquering Earth. It was about survival. The meeting chamber on Ta City's moon colony buzzed with voices that had never before been heard together. Representatives from 7 distinct species sat around a massive table, their differences in biology stark, but their purpose united. General Reed stood before the gathered delegates, still adjusting to the reality of addressing non-humans. 1 year ago, the Empire came to Earth expecting easy conquest. Today, we sit with you as equals, all victims of Imperial aggression. The Saurian ambassador Crest nodded, scales gleaming under the artificial light. Humans have achieved in months what we could not in centuries. You've given us hope. Beside him, the gaseous form of a Viridian pulsed with agreement. The Empire believed strength came from crushing resistance. They never prepared for genuine alliance. Reed activated the holographic display, showing a galactic map with Imperial territories highlighted in red. Separately, we remain vulnerable. Together, we have a fighting chance. He pointed to key Imperial strongholds. What we propose is unprecedented. A Terran alliance with shared technology, resources, and military command. The room fell silent as the delegates considered. Such cooperation had been unthinkable under Imperial rule, where conquered species were deliberately kept isolated from each other. And avian Krex, whose people had been relegated to servant status for generations, spread her wings in a gesture of acceptance. The Empire took our worlds, our dignity. With humans, we see a path to reclaim both. One by one, the delegates voiced agreement. The Terran Alliance was born, named for Earth but belonging to all. Across the galaxy, Emperor Drav received the news with cold fury. His inner council chamber, normally a place of orderly governance, had become a theater of blame and panic. How did this happen? He demanded, glaring at his intelligence chief. 7 species in open rebellion, coordinating attacks across 3 sectors. High Commander Lur, recently promoted after Colt's execution, stepped forward. The humans are providing leadership and technology, Your Majesty. They've created hybrid ships that combine strengths from multiple species. And our fleets. Stretched thin, Lur admitted. We face simultaneous uprisings in 17 systems. The humans have taught our subjects to target our supply lines rather than engage directly. Minister Torg, oldest of the council members, spoke for the first time. Perhaps, Your Majesty, we should consider negotiations. This conflict drains our negotiations. Drab's voice was dangerously soft. With primitives and slaves, he stood, towering over the council. No. We will crush this alliance completely. Deploy the reserve fleets, all of them. In the Sirius system, the alliance's first major offensive was underway. Commander Jackson, now admiral of the combined fleet, watched as ships of human, Saurian, and Viridian design moved in perfect coordination. Imperial Defense Fleet incoming, reported his Krex tactical officer. 43 ships, heavy configuration. Jackson nodded calmly. Execute pattern Hydra. The Alliance fleet, seemingly outnumbered, split into 5 smaller groups. Imperial commanders, trained in conventional warfare, followed standard doctrine by pursuing the largest grouping, only to find themselves pulled apart and surrounded. The battle lasted just 4 hours. When it ended, 38 Imperial ships were destroyed or captured. The Alliance lost 12. Most importantly, the Sirius system, with its massive shipyards, now belonged to the Alliance. Back on Earth, the Global Defense Council received the news with cautious celebration. The war was far from over. but for the first time, victory seemed possible. The Empire never expected us to unite their subjects, General Reed told his staff. Each species brings unique capabilities. Together, we're stronger than the sum of our parts. The Empire had ruled through division and fear. The humans had countered with unity and hope. On the Imperial capital world, riots broke out for the first time in recorded history. Species that had served quietly for generations were rising up, inspired by stories of human resistance. Emperor Drav ordered brutal crackdowns, but each act of suppression only fueled the growing rebellion. The Alliance captured Imperial communication hubs and broadcast a simple message across the galaxy: join us. Freedom is possible. As the Alliance forces pushed toward the Imperial core worlds, capturing the outer defense stations of the throne world itself, Emperor Drav realized a terrible truth. The Empire, which had seemed eternal, might actually fall. The Imperial Palace shook as another explosion rocked the outer defenses. Emperor Drav stood at the viewport, watching Alliance ships break through the last orbital defense ring. The once invincible throne world, heart of an empire that had lasted millennia, was under direct attack. Your Majesty, we must move you to the secure bunker, urged Commander Trell, leader of the Imperial Guard. Drav waved him away. How did it come to this? One primitive world, one insignificant species. In the 2 years since first contact with Earth, the war had transformed from a simple conquest into the Empire's fight for survival. The Alliance now controlled nearly 40% of Imperial territory. Worse, defections had become common. Entire Imperial battle groups changing sides rather than face the innovative tactics of the human-led forces. Your Majesty, please, Trell insisted. The palace defenses won't hold much longer. On the command deck of the Alliance flagship Liberty Admiral Jackson and his multi-species command team monitored the battle. The throne world's defenses were formidable, designed to repel any conceivable attack, but they had never faced the combined ingenuity of 7 united species. Saurian strike teams have disabled the southern shield generator, reported his Viridian second-in-command, General Mist. Human and Krex forces are beginning their landing approach. Jackson nodded, studying the tactical display. And the Imperial fleet. In disarray, 3 command carriers have surrendered. The rest are retreating to secondary positions. This was the moment they had planned for over months. The Alliance had deliberately leaked false information, suggesting their main target was the Imperial shipyards at Proxima Centauri. Instead, they had gathered their forces secretly and struck directly at the heart of the Empire. Signal Commander Gray. Begin the palace assault. On the surface, Commander Gray led the human Krex combined force toward the Imperial Palace. The massive structure, built to showcase Imperial power, now served as its last redoubt. Remember, we want the Emperor alive, Gray told his troops as they advanced through the ornate gardens, now scared by battle. The Empire needs to formally surrender to prevent further bloodshed. Imperial guards fought desperately, but they faced soldiers who had spent 2 years developing tactics specifically to counter Imperial training. The Alliance forces moved in unpredictable patterns, using technology the Empire had never seen: personal shield generators based on Viridian designs, Saurian camouflage systems, and human-developed EMP weapons that disabled Imperial armor. Inside the palace, Emperor Drav was finally convinced to move toward his escape shuttle. The Doomsday device, he reminded High Commander Lur. Is it ready? Lur's expression was grim. Yes, Your Majesty. Once activated, it will create a wormhole that will consume Earth's solar system entirely. Good. Drav's eyes gleamed with malice. If we cannot rule the galaxy, at least we will remove the infection that has spread through it. They hurried through secret passages toward the Imperial hangar, but found their path blocked by fallen debris. Above them, the ceiling groaned as the palace structure weakened under Alliance bombardment. This way, Your Majesty, Lur directed, taking an alternate route. They emerged into a grand ceremonial hall, only to find it occupied by Alliance forces. Commander Gray stood at the center, surrounded by human and alien soldiers. "Emperor Drav," Gray said, not as a greeting but as confirmation. "In the name of the Terran Alliance, I demand your surrender." Drav laughed bitterly. "You think this is victory? I have only to give one command, and your precious Earth will cease to exist." Gray remained calm. "You mean the Doomsday device at the Imperial Science Facility. It was our first target." He held up a communication device. "Your chief scientist surrendered it intact 30 minutes ago." The Emperor's face contorted with rage. He reached for his ceremonial weapon, but High Commander Lur suddenly stepped between them. "Enough," Lur said, turning to face his Emperor. "This war is lost." In a move that shocked everyone present, Lur knelt before Gray. "On behalf of the Imperial forces, I surrender." Guards throughout the palace began laying down their weapons. News of the surrender spread through quantum communication, reaching Imperial forces across the galaxy within minutes. Commander Gray approached Emperor Drav, who stood frozen in disbelief. "The Empire as you knew it is finished," Gray said quietly. "But your people need not suffer further." As Alliance forces secured the palace, the message spread across the galaxy. The Empire had fallen. The species that had been deemed too primitive to matter had led the greatest revolution in galactic history. 3 months after the fall of the Imperial Palace, the newly formed Galactic Council held its first official meeting. The vast chamber, once reserved exclusively for the Emperor's inner circle, now hosted representatives from over 30 species. At the center of the circular table sat Admiral Jackson, Commander Gray, and General Reed, the human leaders who had guided the Alliance to victory. "The last Imperial stronghold surrendered yesterday," Admiral Jackson announced to the assembled delegates. "The war is officially over." A cheer rose from the gathered representatives. Species that had been enemies or strangers just years before now celebrated together. In the gallery above, observers from dozens of worlds watched the historic moment. "And the Emperor?" asked the Saurian delegate. Commander Gray gestured to a side door, where guards led in Emperor Drav. The once mighty ruler walked with his head high, but his eyes showed defeat. His ornate robes had been replaced with simple gray clothing. "Former Emperor Drav has been found guilty of crimes against sentient beings," Gray stated. "However, in the spirit of our new beginning, the Council has commuted the death sentence." Drav looked up in surprise. Under Imperial law, defeated rulers were always executed. Instead, Gray continued, he will live in exile on a protected world, where he can harm no one else. His knowledge of Imperial history will be preserved for future generations. The Council chamber murmured with approval. This justice, firm but not vengeful, set the tone for the new galactic order. As Drav was led away, General Reed took the central position. "Now we must decide how to move forward. The Empire ruled through force and fear for 10,000 years. We must build something better." Over the next 12 hours, the foundation of a new galactic government emerged. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their homeworlds and colonies. The Galactic Council would handle interspecies disputes, coordinate trade, and maintain a defensive fleet, not for conquest, but for protection. Most radical was the decision to open all technology to shared development. The Empire had maintained power by restricting access to advanced science. The Council voted unanimously to create galactic research centers where all species could contribute and benefit equally. On Earth, humans celebrated their central role in the new galactic community. Cities damaged during the initial invasion were rebuilt with alien assistance, incorporating technology from a dozen worlds. The planet that had once been marked for conquest became a symbol of resistance and cooperation. "We never wanted war," General Reed told a reporter during the celebrations. "But when it came to us, we refused to surrender. That's the human way." Throughout the galaxy, a saying began to spread among military strategists and diplomats alike. "Never start a war with humans. They don't know how to lose." The phrase wasn't entirely accurate. Humans had lost many battles during the conflict, but their refusal to accept defeat, their ability to learn and adapt, and their willingness to form alliances had ultimately prevailed against overwhelming odds. 6 months after the Council's formation, a monument was unveiled in orbit around Earth. It displayed ships from all Alliance species arranged in a protective circle around a simple stone taken from Earth's surface. The inscription, translated into every known language, read, "Unity born from adversity, peace secured through courage." At the dedication ceremony, Commander Gray, now Council Security Chief, reflected on the journey. When the Empire came to Earth, they expected to find just another world to conquer. Instead, they found the end of their empire and the beginning of something greater. The former Imperial military officer, High Commander Lur, who had been granted amnesty for his role in the surrender, approached Gray after the ceremony. "We never understood," Lur admitted. "In 10,000 years of conquest, we never faced a species like yours. What makes us different?" Gray asked. Lur thought for a moment. "Most species fight for survival or resources. You humans, you fight for ideas, for freedom, for others you've never even met. It's something we couldn't comprehend, and why we couldn't defeat you." As ships from a dozen worlds docked at Earth's new spaceports and alien visitors walked freely through human cities, the truth of Lur's words was evident. The war had ended, but humanity's impact on the galaxy was just beginning. The stars, once the domain of a cruel empire, now promised opportunity and discovery in a unified galaxy where no species would ever again face conquest alone.